Welcome back into the channel. As usual, Jacob Reid coming back at you, and today we're actually going to be doing an introduction and breakdown of the Pittsburgh Pirates franchise and team in MLB The Show 20 for our franchise that we'll be doing. I'm gonna be having some questions as we go through here on things that I want to know from you guys, on specifically what you guys would like to see and how you'd like to see this franchise play out. And the reason that I have this franchise labeled as just a Pittsburgh Pirates franchise and not necessarily a Pittsburgh Pirates rebuild or anything like that is I want your guys' feedback on how you guys would like to see this stuff play out. So, first things first, do you guys, and you guys can wait to see the breakdown of the team and everything before you guys make a decision on how you would like this to play out. So definitely watch the video and let me know what you guys think. But what I will want to know from you guys throughout the course of this video is how would you guys like to see me play this franchise? Would you like to see me play every single game of the first season? My initial thought was, since it's a rebuild, there's the potential there that we could simulate the first season and just manage the team. And then when it comes around to year two, and, since the Pirates are kind of in a rebuild phase, or at least some people think that they are, we could kind of take over building up the team in year two and year three whenever the rebuild would actually really come into effect and we could be competitive. Or, would you guys like to see me play the games this year? Would you guys like to see me, build the team up and try to do well with what the team has? Or is there another option that you guys might be thinking? Do you want to see a little bit of both, some simulation, just play some games here and there for the first season? Whatever it is that you guys would think would be interesting, feel free to let me know in the comments section. But we're going to break down the franchise and we're going to break down the roster and everything so you guys get a good picture of where everything's at. Obviously, if you are not aware, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and I guess I shouldn't say obviously because it's probably not obvious to everybody. I can't imagine that there are that many Pirates fans out there that watch my channel. But the Pittsburgh Pirates hired a new general manager, a new team manager, and pretty much an entire new staff coming into this season. They traded away Starling Marte, which was their biggest star player, for some prospects in return. So the team is not going to look all that great. And their superstar closer, Felipe Vasquez, or whatever he was being called at the time, he got arrested and put in jail for I think it was a couple different charges, but it basically had to deal with dating a minor pretty much and doing wrongdoing there. But the Pirates roster is kind of weak at this point. There are a lot of really good prospects, and the other thing that I want to mention is that we are going based off the base roster. So shout out to Ryan Rosters, Scout Scoops, and all the guys that worked on the rosters. And that have worked on the rosters in past years. They got with MLB The Show this year. They got with the studio that did the game, and they were able to get most of the players in to the game's base roster. And so what you'll see is all the players on the roster are real prospects. There are no longer generated prospects in MLB The Show. From what I understand. However, there are still some players missing, and so what I did is I took the liberty of going through and adding a bunch of players to the team that weren't there. So if you guys are interested in doing a Pirates franchise where you want some of these players, go out and look for my roster. It's under NM54 Gold Ops, my PlayStation username. And you should be able to find the roster. So the players that I added to the roster, just to summarize that real quick, I added in Chad Kuhl because he wasn't actually on the roster for whatever reason. I think because he's injured. I think that if players were injured and out for a season, they didn't get included on this roster. I added in Brennan Malone, who was the big pitching prospect that the Pirates got back in return for the Starling Marte trade. I added in Braxton Ashcraft, who was a high pitching prospect for this team that wasn't included, and then I added in Quinn Priester, who was their first round pick this past draft. So I added those guys in as big time prospects for the team. I also added in Edgar Santana, who for whatever reason wasn't included on the roster, I think because he was injured as well, but a pretty good relief pitcher for the team. But as you guys can see, not a very good overall. And then I also added in, there might have been a couple others, but I know for sure that I added in Liover Figueroa. I'm probably saying that wrong, but he was one of the big prospects that the Pirates got back in return for Starling Marte. I think I did a decent job on them. So if you, like I said, if you guys are interested in doing a Pirates franchise, or maybe you guys are interested in me helping create the players that are missing on the team that you guys want to do, I can certainly do that type of stuff. You guys just got to let me know down in the comment section. And then let's go ahead and actually go through the roster here real quick and just give you guys a breakdown of what's what. So starting pitcher wise, we're a little bit weak. We have Jameson Taillon, who is the future of the team, hopefully. He should pan out to be their top pitcher, hopefully turn into an ace, but his development time is a little bit limited as he's only a 27-year-old. He's not a super young player like a Mitch Keller that has a lot of development in front of him, so we have to get him up to a high overall early, or he might just kind of be stuck where he's at. So Jameson Taillon, then we have Chris Archer, who has been doing decently well in spring training this year. And keep in mind, if we decide that this should be a rebuild or whatever we decide this should be, most of these players are available for trade. I would kind of like to keep Taillon just because of how much the organization has invested into him because of his cancer and everything that he was out with and his multiple injuries and whatnot. They've really stuck by him, and I think it makes sense for us to keep him as kind of a cornerstone for whatever we do moving forward. I wouldn't be opposed to moving on from any of these other pitchers. So we've got Chris Archer. We have some decent potential guys like Joe Musgrove and Trevor Williams who have had their ups and downs in the past, and they've been really good pitchers at times, but also been pretty bad pitchers at times. So, our rotation isn't the worst. And then we have Mitch Keller. We have a lot of prospects like Brandon Waddle. Stephen Brault is decent. Chad Kuhl, like I had mentioned, who is probably actually going to be in the opening day rotation from my understanding. Domingo Robles. We've got Wei Chung Yuang, who is actually a decent prospect in the system, but the game gave him C potential this year, so we'll see if we can do anything with that. Sam Deerdorf, a good potential player. We're going to skip over some of these guys. Derek Holland, I guess, has been performing well, and he might end up on the opening day roster. This is probably going to be a cut for me, personally speaking, just because he's such a low overall that's just going to result in us giving up runs and home runs and all types of stuff like that. And then, as I mentioned, I added in some of their, like double-A pitching prospects that are pretty highly rated, like Brennan Malone, Braxton Ashcraft, Quinn Priester, and then they've also got Sam Howard. And so pitching-wise, we have a decent rotation, but obviously not that competitive in terms of their overall abilities. In terms of our relief pitchers, our relief staff is going to be very weak, especially considering the loss of Felipe Vasquez. We've got Kyle Crick, who has performed decently. We've got Richard Rodriguez, who is kind of up and down, and he's getting up there in age. Edgar Santana, I added, is supposed to turn into a good relief pitcher for them, but, remains to be seen. Michael Feliz, who, at one point in his career was supposed to have really high potential, just has not really done a whole lot. And then beyond that, we have just a bunch of low overall D potential type of guys. And we really don't have any high potential guys here that are of young age. So one of our main priorities, in my opinion, is going to be going out and finding some relief pitching prospects that are young enough that they could develop into good, 80-ish overall players for us, 80 and above. Some of these guys like, Durapo and Hartlieb and Del Pozo, they're very unlikely to develop into prospects for us because of the fact that they're 27, 25, 26 years old. So by the time their 50 increases to a useful overall, they're going to be 30 years old, and that potential isn't really going to matter for us. And MLB works slightly different in that they can kind of develop past the age of 30, but it is similar in that way to Madden that once you hit like 30 years old, your progression kind of caps off. You're not going to get a ton better after that point. Closing pitcher wise, we do have Keone Kela. I would like to personally keep him around. In the past, I've pitched very well with him. We'll see if I do pitch well with him this year as well. But Keone Kela is a really good pitcher, and I think that he has great potential to be a really nice closer for them this year if they do anything. But he might actually just be a high-end trade piece because of the value that he presents as a closer to another team that is, more competitive. We do actually have a couple decent prospects here on our closing pitcher side. We have Scott Foster, who has a potential as a 73 overall, so I might call him up very early on and get him involved in the relief job. Rob Wallace has a potential, but he is very low overall and 27 years old. So we'll see if we can make something out of him. And then Luis Escobar, a decent prospect, very young, so we should be able to turn him into a decent player. Now let's talk about the positions. Catcher is super weak for us. So I was actually really surprised that they gave Jacob Stallings and Murphy here 76 and 78 overall, respectively. Jacob Stallings is a pretty good defensive catcher, but he's not good offensively. So, same thing with Murphy. This team essentially does not have an effective, rounded type of catcher, and that is going to be a major problem for them. Ideally speaking, I would like to go out and get a catcher, but I think the best way to go about this is to find a prospect that we could develop into a star catcher for us. The problem is that this team has nobody prospect-wise that could turn into a good catcher. These guys all have C potential. Unless one of them turns into a really high performer in AAA or AA, they might get a potential increase, but for the most part, these guys are stuck where they're at, and we don't really have much available potential at the position. So that's going to be a target moving forward. In terms of first base, we've got the big boy Josh Bell, 86 overall with a potential. A lot of people talk about him being a potential trade chip. I like him a lot, but like I said, if it's a rebuild, it makes sense to trade him away. I don't want to part ways with him, but it could make sense, and so that option is going to be on the table, and you guys are going to have to weigh in on that and let me know if you guys are going to be seeking to find a trade partner for him and get prospects back, or what we should do in terms of that. Jose Ozuna could turn into a decent player. He's shown flashes of being an MLB type of player, but at 68 overall, we're waiting for him to break into that useful type of category. And keep in mind that as we go through here, the grades that these players have, or the league that these players are in, MLB, AAA, AA, is not, I have not classified them on how we're going to use them yet. This is just the base, how this roster has them classified. So, like, a good example would be Ozuna. He might be up in the MLB for me just because he's useful and he's potentially actually going to be up on the MLB roster, so we'll see. Second base, we do have a really good hitter in Adam Frazier, and he's actually a pretty good defensive player to boot. And then we have some really good prospects behind him, and Kevin Newman and Kevin Kramer, some guys that I would like to get playing time, and so another trade piece could be Adam Frazier, a guy that could be really helpful to a competitive type team that could use an additional infielder that could help them defensively and maybe help them out in the hitting game. I think I do really well with Adam Frazier, typically speaking. But like I said, options are on the table, because if this is a 2 to 3 year rebuild, he's going to be kind of hitting the end. He's going to be hitting his end of development phase whenever we start getting into our rebuild phase. So he could be kind of just a solid figure for us, or he could be a trade piece to get us more prospects back in return. Like I said, we need relief pitchers big time, and that's going to be one of the biggest concerns for us. And we need to find a way to get a catcher. And if that requires us giving up a good positional player like this, we might have to pull the trigger. At third base, we have Colin Moran, who's a 73 with B potential. He, has the potential to turn into something useful for us. He's a decent hitter, not a very good defensive player, just generally speaking, not that great of a player and not really realizing his potential. I would kind of be tempted to move on from him and maybe bring up a guy like Ke'Bryan Hayes that has really good potential that we could turn into something really special for us, or bringing up some of these prospects that we have at shortstop, because we have a lot of good infield prospects. Right now we have Eric Gonzalez, who, I'm not a fan of. I'm probably going to stow him away in AAA or something, or use him as a platoon type of player. Cole Tucker is a really good prospect for us, really good defensive player. If we could just get his bat going, I think that we could be really successful with him. And then we also have O'Neal Cruz, who is one of the best prospects in baseball right now. I think that we need to get him up to the MLB sooner rather than later. And then, like I said, in that Marte trade, we added Liover Pagero, and please tell me if you guys know how that's pronounced, if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, and how to pronounce it correctly, because I would love to make sure that I'm pronouncing that correctly. But it's going to be 2 to 3 years before he actually hits the MLB, just because of his age, his overall, and everything like that. In terms of the outfield, we can actually make a couple changes right now, because these guys aren't major league outfielders. These are just prospects with Chris Sharp and Pablo Reyes and guys like that. Brian Reynolds in center field. He's got 65 speed. I don't know if I feel comfortable keeping him in center field. I think that he's a really good left field prospect, to be honest with you guys. We do have a couple really good prospects down in the minors. We have Aysen Martin, who could turn into a really good fielder for us. Could actually potentially be a really good center fielder because he's got decent speed. And then Travis Swaggerty is a guy that I want to see on this MLB roster, but it's going to take a little bit of time because of how low overall he is. And then Charlie Tilson. But they did go out and they signed Jarrod Dyson. Jarrod Dyson, I think, for right now, is going to be our center fielder, but I'm going to have to do some comparison. I mean, he's only got slightly better speed than Brian Reynolds, so that's something to consider. But, the general idea is you want your best fielder and center fielder, the guy that's kind of fastest and can get to the most balls. And so I think Jarrod Dyson's going to be center field. Gregory Polanco, as much as I want to trade him away, and you guys that are familiar with me playing MLB know that I would really like to move on from him because he hasn't been successful with this team, we kind of are locked with him. No matter what you guys tell me, I probably can't trade him away until at least the trade deadline. Like, if he has a really good performance and then, we get to the trade deadline, then I could maybe justify trading him away. But from what I've heard, he has absolutely no trade value right now because the Pirates signed him to a big contract. They've invested a ton in him, and he just continues to underperform, so nobody else really wants him. So that is something that we have to consider as we move forward that is going to be an obstacle in our way, because ideally speaking, I'd like to get somebody that can be effective as a right fielder, and I just don't see Gregory Polanco as it. I mean, yeah, he's got B potential, but he's 28 years old, and like I said, the Pirates organization has invested a lot in him, and he continues to let them down. I think that they finally gave him a realistic rating this year where, with his confidence, he's only at a 73. I think on the base roster it says he's a 69, but when we jump in here, the confidence boosts him up to a 73. So, that's where the team stands. Like I said, we do have good prospects at a lot of these positions, and I apologize for some reason my voice is cracking this morning. But that's where we stand in terms of the roster. I'm going to be very hands-on in this franchise. I want to let you guys know that. I will be adjusting the lineup, the rotation, the call-ups, and everything in this roster. I will be doing the training. I will be doing the scouting. I'll be doing all of those things in the franchise as we move along. I will be exploring trades, and so like I said, I want you guys to let me know what you guys want to see from this franchise. In terms of free agency, I'm not really going to touch any of these guys just from the sheer fact that I don't think that is very realistic. Don't get me wrong, I think some of these guys would be useful to the team, and so this is where I think one of my questions for you guys comes into play is, I'm going to scroll through some of these guys. I'm going to go position by position. Do you guys think it would be worthwhile for us to add any of these free agents to the team? Would you like to see me add some of these free agents to the team? Would you like me to hold off on that because it might be more realistic not to? You guys let me know that in the comment section. So scrolling through, there are some good players out here. I don't want to sign anybody that's crazy good like Jordan Belazovic. He's 21 years old and a 79 overall, so he's clearly going to turn into a good player. I don't want to break our franchise that way. But adding in guys like maybe, more experienced relief pitchers like Pat Neshek, I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly, or Colin McHugh, guys like that could potentially help us out. Catcher-wise, we have two decent catchers that are honestly better than these guys. Would you guys want to see Russell Martin come back and play in a Pittsburgh Pirates jersey? That could be interesting for us. Very good defensive catcher. Would you guys like me to fill some of my defensive holes, like potentially outfield? Would you like me to sign, Leonis Martin, or would you like me to see me bring in Yasiel Puig? If any of these names strike an interest to you, feel free to let me know in the comment section. And basically majority roles. If you guys want to see it, I'll do it. I'll add it to the franchise. I want this to be interactive. I want you guys to be interested in it. And so if you are interacting with me and giving me some feedback, I will take that feedback and we'll roll with it. So that's where we're at in terms of free agents. There are some decent ones out there, like I said. And then we're going to talk a little bit about our settings. I'm going to make a separate video on the channel about my recommended settings, but from a user perspective, we're just going to be playing on what is it called? We're not gonna be playing on dynamic. We're gonna start on all-star for the games that we play, because that's my general kind of baseline for where I start out at. If I'm doing too well, I bump up to Hall of Fame. Generally speaking, I hit pretty good. Sometimes I struggle to pitch well. I find that when I pitch outside of the zone, the AI still tends to crack it for home runs, which is just crazy to me. But that is the way things are, and that's the way the game plays. So we gotta just kind of adjust to it. So it is a fluid experience. I'm not playing on dynamic because I hate dynamic and the fact that it just jumps up and down constantly on us. But that's where we're at. And then in addition to that, we started the franchise. I actually have to comment. There are two things that I changed from my last video where we discussed our ideal setup. Number one, we are going to play with the DH on. Just from two arguments. Number one, the Scout Scoops leagues that I'm in, called the 108, they're playing with the designated hitter on for both leagues just to balance things out. And number two, there has been so much talk that is the direction that the MLB is going, that there will be a designated hitter in the NL, and it's going to be adopted by the entire league moving forward within the next couple years. And so I think that from a progressive standpoint, I like the idea of just going with the designated hitter. And then an additional point onto that is that gives us some more options to keep things interesting, because honestly, I don't think it's that interesting to watch the pitcher bat. There really aren't that many good pitchers, or there aren't that many pitchers that can bat that well. And I think from an entertainment perspective, from this franchise's perspective, when you're actually watching gameplay, it'll be more interesting to see a hitter up to bat, and it'll be more offensive that way. And I think that for our franchise's purpose, that gives us more options to bring up some of these prospects and give them chances to succeed. That gives us options to bring up guys like O'Neal Cruz that could fit into the lineup as a bat that could be a designated hitter or something like that. So I think that that's kind of where I'm at with that. And then the other thing that I wanted to discuss is that we went ahead and simulated through spring training. I didn't think there was a whole lot of value for what we're trying to do in terms of going through spring training, because like I said, the general consensus is that it is a rebuild type of franchise. So unless you guys tell me otherwise, that is kind of the notion that we're going to go on. And spring training doesn't serve a whole lot of value for us, in my opinion. So those are the major changes from the previous video that I made, and that's how we're going to roll forward. So we're starting off March 26, 2020 with our opening series at Tampa Bay, and then we're going to have at Chicago, and then we're going to have a home series against Cincinnati. So that's how we start off the season. Like I said, leave your comments down below and your feedback for what you guys want to see out of the franchise. If you guys have been following me for a while, you guys know that I try to get you guys involved if I can. In addition to that, like and subscribe. If you're new to the channel, if you want to see more of this content, subscribe to the channel and like the video. It lets me know that you guys are interested. And like I said, I will keep posting other videos. And I know that some people have expressed that they can't find my Twitch channel. I think that's because I haven't uploaded anything yet to it. So that might be why, but I have to get that figured out. And then once I get that figured out, I'll let you guys know where to go to find my Twitch channel, and we'll be able to get that sorted out. So hope you guys have a good one. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.